This is guy Ilia Topuria, and Ilia Topuria is one of the absolute best fighters in the world. He's the current UFC featherweight champion. The dude is just phenomenal. But when you, one of the things that's phenomenal about him is his technique. His technique is...
This whole thing is incredible. The UFC just announced their White House card lineup, and one fight immediately grabbed everyone by the throat and won't let go. Dana White made it official that Ilia Topuria is putting his featherweight title on the line against interim champ Justin Gaethje in what's building into an absolutely explosive unification showdown. And get this, the moment this news broke and started spreading through every corner of MMA social media, Topuria was already posting early training footage showing he's locked in and ready to get to work. Now that everything's signed and sealed, there's only one question burning through everyone's mind. What goes down when one of the sport's most surgical finishers goes to war with one of its most violent brawlers under the brightest lights possible? This stylistic collision has all the ingredients to be something truly special. The early training footage dropping from Topuria's camp tells a story all by itself without any flashy editing or pump-up music. You're seeing sharp, laser-focused striking combinations, deliberate footwork sequences that are all about creating angles and controlling distance, plus controlled sparring rounds where the emphasis is clearly on timing and defensive reads rather than those brutal gym battles some fighters love showing off. This doesn't look like someone trying to prove how tough he is by going to war in practice. This looks like a champion systematically sharpening his tools, polishing his reflexes, and building the foundation before the real intensity kicks in as fight night approaches. The focus and attention to detail he's displaying is genuinely impressive considering the magnitude of what's coming. Dana White couldn't be more clear about how he sees this whole matchup unfolding, and he's not trying to hide his excitement one bit. From his perspective, Topuria versus Gaethje isn't just another solid fight to fill a main event slot. This is the ideal headliner for a night that's already making history in ways the sport has never experienced. He's been calling Topuria one of the most lethal, most complete champions they have on the books right now. Someone who's demonstrated he can dismantle world-class opposition and make it look effortless. Meanwhile, he keeps pointing to Gaethje's most recent performance, that absolute slugfest that reminded the whole world why Justin creates must-see television every time he steps in there, as the moment that earned him this title opportunity. In Dana's mind, this represents exactly the kind of champion versus champion mayhem, the type of elite-level warfare that you build a White House event around and know it's going to deliver something unforgettable.
It is the main event. Ilia Topuria, one of the most sensational champions we've ever seen inside the octagon, facing Justin Gaethje, which I think is the absolute perfect matchup for him. Justin deserves it after the Paddy Pimblett fight. Ilia Topuria has been just a complete and total phenom, and I can't wait to see what happens at the White House.
Demetrious Johnson, someone who understands championship pressure better than almost anyone, is completely sold on this as a main event choice, and his analysis carries serious weight. He's backing Topuria versus Gaethje purely on the strength of what both men bring to the table, not because of the historic location or all the ceremony surrounding it. From his vantage point as both a former champion and a student of the game, Topuria deserves to be the betting favorite going in, and he's got concrete reasons for that assessment. Complete skill set that works at every range, elite fight intelligence that shows up in his mid-fight adjustments, a proven ability to take damage and keep executing, plus genuine finishing power that makes every moment dangerous for whoever's across from him. Johnson is also fascinated by which version of Gaethje we'll see tactically, because that could flip the entire script. He pointed out that Justin has shown the ability to dial back that pure aggression and fight more strategically when the matchup calls for it, picking his spots instead of just walking forward and throwing bombs. Whether he can actually stick to that disciplined approach with Topuria hunting for counters and looking to capitalize on any opening is one of the most intriguing questions Johnson wants answered.
Let's talk about the fights, okay? The main event is Justin Gaethje taking on Ilia Topuria. I like that fight. I think it's a great fight. I think the biggest thing, like off the top of my head, I think Ilia Topuria knocks him out. But I do see a world where Justin Gaethje could knock him out as well. But Ilia Topuria is so damn good and his IQ is really high and he can take a shot and he damn well can give a shot. But the other flip side of this, what makes me excited, is to see how Justin Gaethje approaches it after spending time with him playing football. Because when he was talking about Paddy Pimblett, he was like, well, Paddy can't kick, so I was okay going into his power. How will he approach this fight against Ilia Topuria, where someone who can kick and has a lot of power? And then
Ariel Helwani, who's witnessed every type of fan overreaction the sport can produce, has been pushing back hard against anyone calling this card a disappointment, just because it doesn't feature some impossible number of simultaneous title fights. His point is that expectations spiraled completely out of control when people started fantasizing about having 7 or 8 championships on the line, something that was never going to happen once you factor in injuries, scheduling conflicts, and how title fight timelines actually work in reality. The hype cycle created this mythical version of the event that the UFC never actually committed to delivering, and now everyone's judging what we're getting against that unrealistic standard.
Title fights, it was not the 7 to 8 title fights as was initially promised. It's a marquee main event. I know that there are some people who are upset. I know that there are some people who are trying to say like, hey, this is a letdown. This is an incredible 6-fight card, and it was never going to be 7 to 8 title fights. That was never going to happen. That would screw up the rest of their schedule. Ilia Topuria coming back against Justin Gaethje is a massive, massive fight. It is a marquee fight. It is one of the biggest fights of the year. Topuria coming back after everything he's been through, almost exactly a year between fights, is a very big deal.
Helwani also revealed some interesting details about how quickly Topuria versus Gaethje came together once it became the direction they decided to go. According to his sources close to the negotiations, the UFC initially pursued other massive fights first, probably some of those super fights that fans were dreaming about online, but ran into brick walls when fighters wouldn't commit or the financial terms couldn't be worked out. When those options disappeared and time started running short, they had to move aggressively to avoid leaving the main event spot looking thrown together or underwhelming. In that rush to secure something worthy of the historic significance, getting a unification bout between Ilia and Justin locked in didn't just solve a sporting problem. It basically saved the entire card from feeling like it was missing that one centerpiece fight that justifies holding an event at the White House in the first place.
Fight could get done. There was massive skepticism. And I also know that Topuria versus Gaethje happened rather quickly as well. And so my feeling is, and I just want to say, the UFC put the fear of God in every MMA manager out there. Like I'm not really in the fight breaking news business anymore, but I did poke around in the dying days. Once Dana White said that they had to, I wanted to see what was up. I even told guys like, I don't even care. Like, I'm not trying to break this. I'm just curious. That's the God's honest truth. they put the fear of God in these managers, and they've been doing this for
MMA Guru, never someone to stay quiet when he sees nonsense floating around the community, has been calling out some of the conspiracy theories that started spreading on social media. Certain fans have been insisting that the UFC would never let Gaethje lose as the American headliner in a White House main event, like there's some predetermined outcome or scripted finish, and he thinks that's completely ridiculous. From where he sits, if this fight unfolds the way recent form and skills suggest it should, Topuria should rightfully be expected to win, and no behind-the-scenes politics are going to change that reality. He's the younger fighter still in his athletic prime with all his physical tools operating at peak level, plus he carries legitimate one-punch knockout power that can end everything in a split second. All factors that Gaethje has to respect and account for every moment they're locked in there together. At the same time, Guru understands exactly why Justin wanted this fight despite being the underdog on paper. His style creates exchanges and forces action, the type of beautiful chaos he's built his reputation on, which means this should be absolutely electric from the opening bell, and could be over instantly if Ilia connects clean on that chin.
They're never going to have a US fighter lose in the main event. Yeah, they are. Justin Gaethje's going to lose to Ilia Topuria in the main event in the White House. If he pulls it off, it'll be cinema, okay? And I'll assume that the rig is in, and Topuria has been paid $10 million to make the US look good on the world stage. Because Gaethje, he's the all-American, he's red, white, he bleeds red, white, and blue, brother. You know what I mean? He's going to be there. He's the only American that's even in conversations to ever be in a title fight. Unless they did Yan O'Malley too. Which people would still complain about, by the way, but it's the only other way they could have a US fighter in a title fight. Jones was never coming back. But Topuria Gaethje's a sick fight. Amazing fight. Love it. I think it's great as the main event of this White House card. But we could have done with a stronger undercard.
Gaethje himself says that the instant this matchup became official and got announced to the world, his training camp essentially picked up right where it left off without skipping a beat. He didn't want any extended break where his timing might get rusty or a slow buildup where he'd have to rediscover his rhythm and intensity. He wanted to transition straight from one preparation cycle into the next while everything's still sharp and the hunger is still burning. For him, this represents much more than just collecting another belt or getting his hands on undisputed gold. He talks openly about his small-town Arizona background, his family's history in copper mining and blue-collar work, and how carrying his country's flag on the White House grounds feels like a once-in-a-lifetime honor that transcends sports. This isn't just a title shot that could reshape his legacy, this is an opportunity to represent his roots and the people who made him who he is on a stage that no combat sports athlete in history has ever competed on.
Map out for you, what's the plan?
Yeah, I mean, it starts now. I mean, I'm going home tomorrow, and Monday I'll be in the gym, you know, back. I've had my chef with me since the last fight. I knew this was coming, so, you know, I was not too banged up after last fight, thankfully, and I'm ready to go.
Justin,
ready to get back into work.
Obviously, you're fighting for the undisputed championship of the world.
Yeah.
That's insane. But as a proud American, what does it mean to be main event at Freedom 250 at the White House? What does that mean to you personally?
Yeah, I mean, I can be as cliche as you want me to be. I mean, this is this is huge. You know, this is you know, coming from such a small town in the United States, southeastern Arizona. You know, from a copper mining family. I love this country. I've loved it. You know, you grow up representing your small town, you know, your mascot at school, and then it was college. And now I get to represent this country. So, I mean, this is special to me. It's such a great honor and opportunity to highlight, you know, to finish or you know, not finish, but the end of my career has been so special. The caliber of fighters such as this guy that I have fought since the beginning has been incredible. And to see my story come you know, in full circle like this and get an opportunity like this to be a headline of UFC 300, to be the headline of the UFC Paramount premiere, and to get this opportunity, you know, shows that, you know, I'm something special when I'm in there, and I believe I'm the most exciting guy. That's why I'm here.
When Gaethje breaks down the actual challenge in front of him, the tactical puzzle he needs to solve, he keeps coming back to the same central concern, Topuria's timing and distance control. He absolutely respects the knockout power, no question about that. But he says the real threat isn't just the finishing ability itself, it's how consistently and accurately Ilia finds his target regardless of the situation. In his analysis, the key to victory isn't simply absorbing punishment and trying to land first in wild exchanges, hoping to catch him before he catches you. It's actively disrupting those timing reads, never allowing Topuria to settle into his preferred rhythm and start zeroing in on his marks. Even when reporters try to steer the conversation toward the symbolism of potentially winning gold at the White House or what it would mean for his place in history, Gaethje keeps pulling focus back to that fundamental tactical battle because he understands that's where this fight will truly be decided.
His technical abilities, I mean, he fights a very good fight. You know, he does a very good job of controlling distance. His footwork is special, and that's going to be the biggest task for me, is to control his feet and control distance and not let him, you know, find those power shots. There's no doubt he hits hard, and I obviously hit hard as well, but timing is everything. The reason his shots are so effective is because his timing is so perfect, and I'm going to have to disrupt that timing.
Just
Go ahead, please, Kate.
Well, I was just going to say, just real quick, have you spoken to your family since the news dropped?
So my mom,
Wraps the undisputed lightweight championship around your waist.
That would be special, but not as special as accomplishing what I set out to accomplish when I started this journey, and that is to become the undisputed champion. And to do it against like a guy like Ilia Topuria on the White House lawn will be absolutely special, and Trump handing me the belt will be icing on the cake.
From a thematic perspective, looking at what this entire event represents symbolically, Oscar Willis believes Gaethje makes perfect sense as the main event centerpiece. On a card so deeply connected to the White House and national pride and American tradition, having an American warrior in the headline position feels completely natural and almost poetically appropriate, even if the odds makers have him as the underdog. Even if most experts are picking against him based on pure analysis, Willis calls it an inspired choice for this particular moment in time. Topuria may be the rightful favorite based on recent performances and overall skill set, but Gaethje's fighting style and proven track record and ability to change everything with one explosive moment make it impossible to completely write him off, regardless of what the betting lines indicate.
Theme of the whole event, I think you can say what you want about Justin's chances in that fight. Obviously, a lot of people have him as the underdog, quite a favorable, quite a significant one against Ilia. But if you're going to go for the whole American vibe and fucking fly over jets and all the rest of it, Justin Gaethje probably makes sense, right? So I think that fight, it's good. It's thematically correct. And let's say Justin, pulls off the upset. I mean, possibly one of the greatest moments in UFC history for the American fan base anyway. So I don't really hate that fight.
Luke Thomas views this matchup as something the lightweight division basically demanded through the natural flow of championship timelines. With Topuria holding the undisputed belt and defending it successfully, and Gaethje carrying interim gold after his last war, he argues there's really no room for creative matchmaking or trying to manufacture some other storyline. The logical next step practically writes itself when you look at the rankings and championship structure. In his assessment, once you have two legitimate champions in the same weight class, both holding actual gold and both with valid claims, the cleanest resolution is obvious. Put them in a cage together and determine who the real king is. No interim labels, no asterisks, just one undisputed ruler.
So we do this, we react. Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje is the main event in Washington, D.C. for the Freedom Fights 250, the American-themed event at the White House. We'll go through it sort of line by line. I don't want to reveal too much because I want to ask Dana about this at the press conference. I don't think this was the original main event they had. I think yesterday that fight fell out. I think they had alternate plans for Ilia, and for whatever reason they had to pivot, and I believe they finally got something done with Ilia to accept the Justin Gaethje fight at the White House. I think if you look at the American theme of the whole event, I think you can say what you want about Justin's.
Willis sees another compelling narrative in how this fight even ended up in this position on this particular card. He suspects Topuria versus Gaethje wasn't the original plan for the main event slot, not the fight the UFC initially envisioned when they first started conceptualizing a White House event. He thinks they probably had a different super fight in mind for that historic venue. When that option collapsed, whether through failed negotiations or an injury or timing issues, they had to pivot quickly and find something that still carried the appropriate weight and excitement that such a moment demanded. This unification bout was the high-stakes, high-quality matchup they could actually deliver in time without sacrificing star power or competitive legitimacy.
Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje. Of all the available choices that they have, yes, would have been great to have, Ilia versus Arman or Ilia versus Islam, sure. But in a world where Gaethje is already the interim champion based on UFC 324, this is the fight that has to happen to unify those titles, right? Because Ilia has the normal title and Gaethje has the interim one. The fight will be exciting. I know people were talking like, oh, you can't have an American get stretched on the White House lawn. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. There's absolutely no connection historically to mixed martial arts and, you know, I don't know, the patriotic trimmings generally. More to the point, like, this is an important fight. You've got an American in it, and if Ilia wins, you're now putting over on one of your sort of more significant cards one of the most important guys currently on your roster, and maybe for the future of it as well.
He's also quick. Luke points out that just because it might not have been plan A doesn't make it any less exciting or compelling as a piece of matchmaking. Topuria enters this fight riding a wave of devastating finishes and building momentum that has him looking like one of the most dangerous fighters in any division. Gaethje's entire career has been built on creating absolute mayhem and fight of the night classics that make you jump out of your seat and lose your mind. That combination of Topuria's surgical precision with Gaethje's beautiful violence and unpredictability is exactly why Thomas expects this matchup to deliver pure entertainment regardless of where it takes place, whether that's at the White House or in a standard arena setting.
First with the main event of Topuria and Gaethje. So Alvaro Cornameno, who I mentioned a couple weeks back, looks like he was wrong about that report because he thought this fight might not happen on the White House card. It is. Maybe something changed. I don't know. But yeah, this is a great main event for the card. Everyone's excited. You know, a lot of people feel like it should be Arman and Ilia, but obviously Gaethje won the interim title, so he's up next. He's going to fight Ilia Topuria in this fight, so that makes sense.
James Lynch reads the situation the same way when you examine it through traditional matchmaking logic. Once Gaethje captured interim gold and established himself as the clear #1 contender, this unification bout became the obvious main event choice, whether fans preferred other names or wanted to see different matchups or not. He acknowledges that some people were pushing for contenders like Arman Tsarukyan to jump into the title picture instead, making the case that Arman might present a more difficult stylistic challenge or be more deserving based on his recent winning streak. But from a conventional matchmaking perspective, using the way this sport has always operated, the interim champion is supposed to face the undisputed champion next. That's the entire purpose of creating interim gold in the first place. That's why, for Lynch, seeing Topuria versus Gaethje announced for the White House card felt inevitable rather than surprising once you understood the championship landscape and the obligations the UFC had already created. All of that context, all of those different perspectives from fighters and analysts and industry insiders explains why this single matchup carries so much of the event's energy and excitement on its shoulders without needing a loaded undercard to prop it up. Topuria looks like one of the sport's most lethal champions right now, cutting through elite opposition with clinical efficiency and finishing world-class fighters at a pace that makes you wonder who can actually test him. Gaethje has spent his entire career stepping into beautiful chaos and flipping fights completely upside down with one perfectly timed bomb, the kind of power that erases game plans and makes every expert prediction meaningless. If Ilia can keep the exchanges technical, maintain his distance control, and execute his strategy the way he's shown he's capable of, he could add another vicious knockout to his growing highlight reel and establish himself as a truly dominant champion. If Justin can drag him into the type of phone booth war he specializes in, if he can make it messy and violent and unpredictable, the way he does better than anyone, this whole thing could change directions in a heartbeat, and we could be witnessing the next chapter in the Gaethje legend being written. This doesn't feel like the type of main event that coasts to a decision with both men playing it safe and point fighting. This feels like guaranteed violence from the second that cage door locks shut. Drop your predictions in the comments about who you're backing in this one, Topuria or Gaethje, and how you actually see it ending on that White House lawn, because this is one of those fights where everyone has a strong opinion, but nobody really knows what's going to happen when these two finally collide.